Okay, hello. It's welcome to week 27 Humanities. Let's start by not forgetting to turn in our week 26 HLAs by photo to your academic dean. We're going to start with memory work. Don't forget that you can recite along with me. You can read aloud while I read with you when I say ready, begin. Ready, begin. Sensitivity is using my senses to perceive the true attitudes and emotions of others. I listen to others fully. I watch facial expressions. I notice tone of voice. I put myself in others' shoes. I show that I care. For the introduction to the human body song, I have the drive link there for you, and you can go ahead and click on that to find the music. I'm not going to sing the song. I'm just going to read along with it, but it's really good for you to make sure you click on that and sing along with the words. Ready, begin. Cells that work together in your body form tissues. Tissues form the organs. Organs form systems in you. These systems work together to keep your body alive. The nervous system makes them all react so you'll survive. These systems are keeping you alive. Respiratory system uses oxygen you breathe. In circulatory, blood is pumping by heartbeat. Some waste is excreted through the urinary tract. Hormones come from the endocrine, and immune will attack. These systems are keeping you alive. Our bodies, they are different for reproductive means. Digest for food absorption, but we eat too much, it seems. The skeletal connects the bones by the ligaments. The muscular, like levers, all control the bone movements. These systems are keeping you alive. Our math cheers. Ready, begin. People learn to like math, and I'm on that positive path. Mathematical thinking is if-then thinking and helps me in everyday life. Visualizing math helps me see the way each problem is supposed to be. Checking my work again is better for my brain. 6 reasons people miss math problems. Ready, begin. Visualizing, so I imagine the math. Messiness, so I write neatly. Reading, so I carefully read the whole problem. Simple math, so I watch for my mistakes. Transferring, so I double check what I write. Concepts, and then I read it again or ask for help. Timeline dates and events. Ready, begin. Prehistory, first evidence of human migration from Africa to Eurasia. Stone Age, figures painted in Lascaux, France caves. 10,000 BCE, Mesopotamians developed agriculture in Fertile Crescent. 8,000 BCE, South Americans developed cave painting, textiles, and agriculture in Peru. 3200 BCE, Sumerians invented cuneiform writing. 3000 BCE, Pharaoh Menes unified Upper and Lower Kingdoms of Egypt. 1700 BCE, Hammurabi compiled first known law code in Babylon. 1339 BCE, King Tutankhamun entombed in Egypt's Valley of the Kings. 1300 BCE, epic story of Gilgamesh recorded early Mesopotamian culture. 1250 BCE, Greeks fought Trojan War in Anatolia. 1122 BCE, Zhou dynasty invoked mandate of heaven, beginning longest rule of China. 1050 BCE, Phoenicians devised phonetic alphabet. 776 BCE, Greeks held first recorded Olympic Games. 753 BCE, legendary twins Romulus and Remus founded Rome. 587 BCE, Nebuchadnezzar II captured Jerusalem and destroyed its temple. 563 BCE, Prince Siddhartha, later known as Buddha, born in India. 539 BCE, Babylon fell to Persian king Cyrus the Great. 522 BCE, Chinese philosopher Confucius initiated teaching of ethics. 509 BCE, Roman Republic replaced monarchy. 508 BCE, Athenians instituted first democracy. 500 BCE, Greek mathematician Pythagoras proposed round earth theory. 480 BCE, Classical period began, influenced by Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. 330 BCE, Alexander the Great's conquests spread Greek culture into Egypt and Asia. 221 BCE, Qin dynasty began construction of Great Wall along China's northern border. 44 BCE, Julius Caesar assassinated in Rome on the Ides of March. 27 BCE, Octavian installed as first Roman emperor. 3 BCE, Jesus Christ born in Bethlehem, Judea. 79 CE, Mount Vesuvius erupted, destroying Pompeii. 476 BCE, or CE, Western Roman Empire collapsed. I hope I said CE on both of those. Our Western Europe song was this last month. It's our last geography song of the year. And today is the quiz day. This week, week 27 is what we would normally have a quiz. The older students try to locate the names while they memorize the song. And so we try to do that on this video just because we can. That's pretty fun. So I'm going to sing the song and locate it here with my pointer. But then the next slide is for you to test yourself. So you can pause the video next time. But for now, I'll sing it with you. Ready, begin. Luxembourg, Liechtenstein, Switzerland, Austria, Belgium, and Netherlands, France and Monaco, Germany are all in Western Europe. Okay, and here are, all my numbers disappeared. Okay, well, I didn't get the slide in there. That is your other lesson, but here's your test. You can try your best to locate each country, and you can go back and use the last slide for answers, and that will help you kind of test yourself to see if you can figure out where all those countries are. The little tiny ones aren't showing up so great on this map, but you can kind of see them. So Luxembourg, Liechtenstein. So there you go. Good luck. Okay, now on this video, week 27, I'm going to be going over our year-end finale reciting options. The way we're going to do this is on June 12th, we will be airing a live video of all of the reciting options, or the year-end finale, that's going to include some poetry reciting and timeline date reciting by different students, as well as some speeches and special events. And it's going to last about an hour or more, and it'll be really fun. So to start with, we are going to give you two options, and you can go to these links and sign up. So I'm going to click on this link right now and show you where it's going to go. Oh, it's not going to go there for me. Okay. If you can click on this link in the slideshow, or the link is also in your week 26 and 27 emails, go there and sign up for one of the dates. And then what the instructions are is to pick a timeline date, like 44 BCE, and then you say that that's the one you want to recite. And then you video yourself reciting that timeline date, and then you send that video to the email address to Mrs. Sano, and that video will be the timeline date when we put them all together. So we'll clip all of the timeline dates together with different students, and we will also have that for Mark Antony's funeral oration for the funeral speech for any students who want to do it Grammar A through Dialectic 3. So the challenge is for you guys to click on those links, and it will take you to a place to sign up. So that's the plan for the year-end finale. It's going to be really exciting. I think that you're going to really like it. And I'm going to practice right now the Mark Antony speech with you. Okay? So, ready, begin from the top. Mark Antony's funeral oration from the play Julius Caesar by Shakespeare. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is often interred with their bones. So let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you that Caesar was ambitious. If it were so, it was a grievous fault, and grievously hath Caesar answered it. Here, under leave of Brutus and the rest, for Brutus is an honorable man, so are they all honorable men, come I to speak in Caesar's funeral. He was my friend, faithful and just to me, but Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. He hath brought many captives home to Rome, whose ransoms did the general coffers fill. Did this in Caesar seem ambitious? When that the poor have cried, Caesar hath wept. Ambition should be made of sterner stuff. Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. You all did see that on the Lupercal I thrice presented him a kingly crown, which he did thrice refuse. Was this ambitious? Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and sure, he is an honorable man. I speak not to disprove what Brutus spoke, but here I am to speak what I do know. You all did love him once, not without cause. What cause withholds you then to mourn for him? O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason. Bear with me. My heart is in the coffin, there with Caesar, and I must pause till it come back to me. So that is a poem that the school memorized, grammar A through advanced placement rhetoric level. And all of us worked on it except the pre-readers. Pre-readers memorized a different poem this school year, and they are going to put a video out where they get to recite a line from this poem. So this is a poem that they are reciting, and I'm going to just read it with them. So for you pre-readers and anybody else who wants to join us, ready, begin. Work by Anonymous. Work while you work, play while you play. This is the way to be happy each day. All that you do, do with your might. Things done in halves are never done right. Welcome to week 27 character. We do have a quiz this week. So here's my quiz. I just left it up here for you guys with all of the fill in the blanks. And you can go ahead and pause the video and try to go say this as well as you can. Try to fill in all those blanks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 blanks. And if you need to go back and get yourself a hint, you're welcome to do that. You can just flip around on the slides as you need to. Pause the video if you need to. Welcome to week 27, Humanities, Art, Music, and Timeline Date. So here's your quiz this week. I just left it blank. What is the title of this artwork? What is the artist's name who put it together, or at least the engineers who commanded it to be built or designed it? What is the approximate date and location? Do you remember the size of the work? You don't have to remember these things, but you can quiz yourself, and if you do, that's fantastic. The next slide has the answers, so you can review and pause as needed. For music, we're doing the same thing. What is the name of the musical piece we studied this month? And there is the link. If you are in the slides, then you can click on that link, and it will take you there. And then who is the composer? And try to remember that. Okay? And the next slide is the answers, Here we go. And on the next slide, I have our solfege practice. So if you are using the slideshow, not the video, but if you're using the slideshow, you can click on this emblem down here, and it will help you do the solfege, do, re, mi, all the way up. And then the next couple of slides are good practice. They're the same as last week, but still very great to practice on. So go ahead and click on these links, and it will help you practice the exercises. I think we have 5 exercises for you to work on. So if you're on the slides, please go ahead and interact with that. And our timeline date this week, we kind of already talked about, so I copied the slide from before just to get us started. This timeline date is 3 BCE, Jesus Christ born in Bethlehem, Judea. This was very transformative. Christians who followed Jesus have affected much of world history after that point. So these are, as I said before, different pictures. If you didn't catch this slideshow last time, or just to review, we don't actually know what this guy looked like. We do believe that he, was more Arabic looking, and he would have looked like a Jew of that time. So as most Christians believe that he's the incarnation of God, the Son, and is the awaited Christ prophesied in the Jewish writings. He went by different names. He went by Jesus Christ, Jesus of Nazareth. He was called Emmanuel. And then I have 3 different languages here for you to look at. Kind of fun to look at their letters. The first one is Christ in Greek, which meant anointed one. The second one is reading from right to left, backwards. This is Hebrew language. And in the Jewish culture, he was considered Messiah. And then in Islam, also reading right to left, he is the son of Mary. And he is referred to in their writings all over the place. And so you can go check those out. So he was perceived as God, the Son of God, or a prophet. Both of those options were there. This whole thing started over here on the east side of the Mediterranean Sea. And this area is where he was born. And so he didn't go into a public, any kind of ministry or public life until he was 30 years old. And before that time, he'd stayed pretty quiet. There is historical evidence that's oral, and they did a lot of oral storytelling and histories, but there's also written histories, and both of those exist. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. This picture on this page is a man named Josephus. Josephus was a historian at the time. He was actually of Jewish descent, but he was a Roman employee, and lived in both worlds. And the reason there's not a lot of information on Jesus at that time is because he was a peasant. And so I highlighted that word in peasant in red. Peasants don't normally leave an archaeological trail. Peasants are people who are poor and common, and they don't, like most common people, don't really have a lot of history written about them. So like I said, until he was 30, he lived as a peasant. He was probably a laborer. He was said to be a carpenter. So that means he built wooden structures. And he doesn't have a ton of archaeology, but what we do have is from this guy, Josephus. He was a historian, well-connected, and he wrote a huge amount. And he was a military leader, and he led the Jewish revolt against Rome. But he was very well read. He was able to write, which was not something everybody could do at the time. We also have historical evidence from this guy named Tacitus. And Cornelius Tacitus was a person who wrote a lot also, called the Annals of Imperial Rome, histories. And so just to be clear, these two men are writing like 50, 60 years apart from each other about evidence regarding Jesus Christ, who died in like 30 BC or AD. So both of these men are writing after the fact. They did not see things happen, but they wrote about what the culture was saying. And so this is what Tacitus said. And this quote right here I'm going to read. Just about everything he says coincides, from a completely different point of view, by a Roman author disdainful of Christians and their superstition. I'm sorry, that's a quote from a website, a reputable website, about Tacitus's writing. Tacitus presented these bullet points in his writings that Jesus was executed. Jesus was executed by the governor of Judea, Pontius Pilate. He was executed for crimes against the state, which meant he was challenging the state's authority, and he was executed. And then a religious movement of his followers sprang up after he was crucified. So that Tacitus information fits with other letters that were circulating at the time that have now come to be called the New Testament. And I'll talk about that in a second. This is the basic story of his birth, a very poor person's birth. He's said to have been born in a cave or in a stable, and he was not put on a throne. He was not put anywhere fancy. And this is a picture of what it might have looked like. This is a white version, and so that's European people did a lot of artwork with Jesus being white, which is what we now know not true. The Christian basic beliefs about Jesus is that he is the God the Son, and that God made man, that that he died for the wrong that people have done, and he came back to life after he died, and he rose from earth to sky to heaven, and he will come back to earth and save his followers. And all of that information is stuff that he taught during the 3 years that he walked around and taught and healed. And their most principal book that they is called a book, but there's actually New Testament letters circulating at the time. The letter written by Matthew, a letter written by Mark, a letter written by Luke and John, and all those 4 letters tell the story from different perspectives. Some a Greek perspective, some a Jewish perspective, just different perspectives. Here's an example of the kinds of writings that we have around the mid 300s. So, he died in 30, and then the mid 300s, we have this evidence of people following in writing in Greek here. This is called Codex. And it's from the Eastern Mediterranean. We have another example here, another codex. They all have names. So all these archaeological findings get like a name and a number. And so this is another one, and it's a Greek manuscript from the mid 400s. And this one's known as the, palimpsest. Palimpsest. And it's a kind of writing paper document that they were using, and archaeologists understand that that's something from that era, that time period. And then there's also Islamic or Muslim beliefs about this. Most Muslims believe that he was pure, that Jesus was a prophet, he was wise, he was a healer. And they mention 93 times in the Quran, which came about many years later in the, after the 7th century, the Quran came, but it mentions the Son of Mary 93 times. And so if you are growing up in a Muslim household or in a Christian household, you will hear about Jesus, and the perspective will be a little bit different. And they refer in the Quran to Jesus as the Son of Mary. Same person, though. I'm trying to point that out. We're talking about the same person. Here is a medieval Persian manuscript, and this is from the Middle Ages, but this is something they would have depicted years and years after they formed the Muslim religion. So there's a National Geographic optional resource here. It's a 3-minute overview on Jesus. It is a huge subject, but that's a good basic overview. Here are some other artwork pictures. I just wanted to kind of make sure you understand. Don't know exactly what he looked like, but what we do know is that he always had, this holy, divine, not always, but in a lot of artwork, he had a gold circle around his head. And this is saying that the things that come from him are light and bright and divine. And it was used in artwork all the time. So you can see these pieces have this divine element referencing Jesus. Scholars, compete with what exactly he meant at the time. He definitely spoke and taught, but what he was doing and saying is, here's a whole list of what people say. He was a charismatic healer. A healer. He described himself as a Messiah, or the one who came to save. The leader, he ended up being the leader of an apocalyptic movement, which meant like apocalyptic means afterlife or the next world. And in his was referencing, the next world after this one. He was a sage, a philosopher, a rabbi, A rabbi is a teacher. A sage is a wise person. He was a social reformer. He preached the kingdom of God as a means for personal and social transformation. And if you're, trying to learn about him for the first time, this information is just a small taste of the kinds of, traits that people put on him. But he's one of those major world leaders that everybody, needs to know about. He has a very famous saying, and he did not say it in English. He said it in Greek, but we've translated it, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." And he really taught people about that concept of being others-centered. Okay, that's our timeline date. Now, welcome to week 27, Humanities. Today, we're talking about Rome and the Barbarians. Okay, first of all, remember that you can do Cornell notes. I'd love for you to take notes on the lecture. It helps you stay engaged. You can doodle notes. You can write notes. It's really good. If you were at school, we'd be helping you learn more about Cornell notes. So just really important to stay engaged while I'm talking a lot. I get it. First of all, our first topic is, what is a barbarian? Well, barbarians, that's a big word. Let's just go back for just a moment and remember that we've just been talking about Rome, right? The formation of Rome. Rome was a republic, and then Rome became an empire. And now we've got these leaders who are in charge of Rome, and they're not the only ones in the world, right? There's other people. And so what ended up happening is the barbarian term became a label used to describe any members of a community or tribe who are not belonging to the, one of the three great historical civilizations in the world, Greece or Rome, or the, what ended up being the Christian civilization of European Middle Ages. And so they kind of had this, you're either with us, the Romans, or you're not with us and you're a barbarian. So there's just two teams that people, historians, Romans were referencing. Only the Romans were referencing themselves as the best, and then everybody else was considered a barbarian. So this term would not have had the same meaning then as it does now. It basically meant you're an outsider. But when someone did call you a barbarian, it was not meant to be kind. So here's a funny joke. Here's a mom left in her tent with her baby, and this barbarian is here grumpily standing in the tent, and she says, "Sack Rome, that's your answer to everything." Well, this is obviously an artist's joke about what was going on, but she wants his help in the house, and he's leaving, and she says, "Why are you leaving?" And he says, "I'm going to go sack Rome." And she says, "Gosh, you say that all the time. Sacking Rome means taking over Rome and destroying Rome." So the barbarians really wanted to do that. And so we're going to walk through three major elements of this. Now that we've basically introduced the barbarian concept, let's go talk about Venice and Attila the Hun, okay? So I have here a map. There are this people group right here in the middle of the map. It says the Huns. And it's hard to see on this map exactly, but this is above Greece. See, these are the three fingers of Greece down here, above Greece. And then over here, I covered it with my yellow box, but over here is Italy. And to the east and north is this huge mountainous region. And these people became known as the Huns. And they were nomadic. That means that they traveled. They did not stay in one spot. They really just kind of lived on horses. They were known to have been on horses most of the time. And they traveled and traveled and traveled throughout the whole entire area. That you're going to see that they went through Greece, all of Europe, Southern Europe. And so when they went to a new town, they decided to take it over. They would be warriors. And they ended up becoming known as dangerous, scary, violent people. In fact, I have all these great resources down here for you to learn more about the Hun people. And I gave you a couple of good ones, but I decided not to give you very many because they were a very violent people. And so all the historical YouTubes and stuff, some of them have like reenactments of people getting stabbed because That's what the Huns were doing, right? They were pretty violent. And they were around for a long time, but one of the most violent warrior-like leaders was Attila. And that's a fun word to say. You can say Attila with me. And he led the people for a good 20 years. And what ended up happening is they defeated the non-Romans that lived above Italy and invaded the Eastern and Western Roman Empire. They conquered all the way to the Atlantic Ocean in France, and they plundered. Plundering is when you take over, a city, and then you take all the valuables out of there. But they did not end up taking the city of Rome. So we could have said Attila the Hun and barbarians invaded Rome, but we instead wrote Venice was founded by refugees, because it's kind of an interesting, well, I'm asking you why. You can pause and discuss why that would be. But the actual topic is that Venice was founded by refugees from Attila's Huns. And ended up happening that all of Italy was not taken over, but a lot of it was during that time period. They were just so violent, okay? But this idea that refugees, people who were not Roman, came in and started taking over the area was a big deal, okay? We're going to talk more about that today. Lots of interesting things regarding citizenship. So here's a map. I'm going to show you, this box is covering it, but this is Great Britain. This is the Atlantic Ocean, for what it's worth. And over here at the east is where the Huns started. They brought in troops, and then they would just burn. And so you see all these cities with a little red line over them? That means that they burned the city down. And they first went to Worms, and then Mainz, and then they went up to Cologne, and they split, went to Trier, Metz, Reims, and Chalon, and then Troyes and Orleans. Oh, wait, actually, I got kind of mixed up. Cologne, Tournai, Cambria. I don't know how to say all this with a French accent perfectly, but Amiens and Beauvais and Paris. And they went to all these places and just really, really burned and were super violent. But eventually they got up here, and they ended up doing a huge fight against the Romans and Visigoths and the Allies. They kind of course, got a reputation for being scary and violent. So the Romans came up and went to war with them. Here is an example of an artist's impression of them coming into Italy and trying to take it over. You can see these Roman columns here. I am positive that these nomadic, violent, warrior-type people, when they finally did get to Rome and see such this beautifully laid out, beautifully organized, well put together city, it was a huge difference, right? You just had people who were in togas and then people who were living like warriors. Very different. But they ended up getting down to an area called Venice. And Venice is very much in water. In fact, right now, Venice has a lot of water around it. It's been like that for many years. And people just keep living right on these little tiny islands all over Venice. This is what it looks like today. You can go to Venice and get around by boat, which is the main way to travel through the city, by foot or by boat. And it's just a beautiful city in water. And a lot of the founding of the city was by refugees, people who ran away from the violence. And refugees are people who have to flee their homeland so that they can, get somewhere safe. And if you remember earlier in the year, we talked about, why would someone leave their land? Is it because they're getting pulled out to something attractive, or pushed out because something is hard where they live? And we talked about pull factors, which are attractive ideas like a new job somewhere, or push factors like disease or starvation, and that pushes you out of the land you live. Well, refugees are people who are getting pushed out of the land where they're at because of some reason, like violence and starvation. And those people ended up settling in this area, Venice. So here is just another little map of the migrations and the kingdoms of the Goths. Let's go through this a little bit. I'm going to go follow the red line to start with. This is the Visigoths. They came up around the water, went north and south. They also came by boat to the south and went up to the middle of Italy. Okay, then they continued and they went all the way down along Spain and into Spain and then up into France. So these people traveled a ton. And then we have the Ostrogoths. Now, Ostrogoths are the non-Roman people, not of the same descent, not the same group, but they are also non-Romans. And they came from the east and went down into Italy. And that's all about the same time. So people were fighting over the land. It was pretty upsetting. Okay, so that's my basic idea. Venice was founded by these people who had to run away from barbarians or people who were attacking and violent. Okay. Then there's this other thing going on, the same time period, a little bit earlier, but the same era. And I'm going to back up a little bit so we can remember some things I've talked about already this term. This slide is one I showed you a few weeks ago about all of the emperors. I pointed out to you that we had just so many emperors in Rome. When it went from being a republic to then having an empire, and Augustus claimed the crown and became the divine emperor, then we had, I don't know how many I counted here, 40 or something emperors for 500 years. And one of those was named Hadrian. Over here, I've highlighted his name, Hadrian. And here he is, a bust of Hadrian. And he was an emperor during a time where they traveled all the way up to Great Britain. Now, I'm going to use my red dot up here in this little map. I hope it's not too small on whatever you're looking on. But it's in the middle of Italy. And they went up through France and got across the water up here to Great Britain. They also went by boat around, and the Romans ended up settling and kind of made a colony, a Roman colony up here of this land. And this land is now called Great Britain, but it was made up of very different people. And the little area up there is this box. And Hadrian wanted to build, the Emperor Hadrian wanted to build a wall to cut the country off. There was a wall later on also that had been started by Antonin, but we're talking about the Hadrian Wall. And here's a picture of it. You can see it today. Now, pause for a second and just get a flashback of the beautiful Great Wall of China that's immense and huge, and it has fortresses every mile or so in the landscape in China. And this wall is much smaller. It was still a very big deal to build. And originally it was much larger than this, but the stones have been taken by farmers and others who want to build other things. And it did start off to be 20 feet tall. And this one's only like maybe 5 or so feet tall. You can see the people down here standing next to it. And it's not in great shape. But that is Hadrian's Wall. You can go see it today. It was built in about 122 AD. And like I said, built along the middle of England in a space where it's only 73 miles long. Now, my family lives about an hour away on the freeway, and that's about 73 miles. So you can go across that whole stretch of island in 73 miles. It was a 20 feet wide and 10 to 20 feet tall structure. So 20 feet wide would be, I don't know, as wide as a classroom. That's how many bricks they would have had to lay there. And they had many people man the wall. I actually have great videos on this since there's less violence. And these videos are just short ones, but I really want you to watch them They tell you about how this wall got built, and they actually have someone walking around the wall, and you can experience it that way. What is the point of bringing this up on a week when we're talking about barbarians? Well, why do you think he built a wall in the first place? To keep out the barbarians. And they also used it to tax people, because they wanted to collect taxes from anybody crossing over the wall. And so they would have soldiers there on the wall, and if you wanted to cross, you'd have to pay, kind of like a toll booth. And then if you wanted to import, like if you wanted to bring in like maybe pots or pans, you'd have to pay on that. And if you wanted to send out from the wall things that you had maybe grown on your farm, you'd have to pay for that. So it was a taxation point. They got a lot of money from people who wanted to cross that point. This is another beautiful picture of what it looks like there in Great Britain. You can, like I said, go see it. And that's what we're talking about for Hadrian's Wall. Now I'm going to move on to talking to you about something very different from barbarians, kind of a reaction to barbarians. Now remember, that wall got built in 121, I think, and we had the Huns come in, and then about 40 years later, we have this new era. We have one of the 5 great emperors, Marcus Aurelius, who is here waving at us on this horse. And Marcus Aurelius becomes this new kind of leader. He's special, he's wise, he's good, he's trying his best to do what's the best idea for all of the people in the country. And so he is going to rule the Western Roman Empire. And he shared his power with his brother Lucius. Went to war with the Parthians, and he won. That was a very big war. I'm not going to go into it. And then they also had an interesting thing I wanted to point out regarding kind of a tie-in to what we're going through right now. We are quarantined because of a pandemic. And at the time that he was the leader, his people caught smallpox. And millions of people died. Very big deal. Smallpox killed people when he was alive, and he actually tried to deal with the sickness in an interesting way, and he tried very hard to lead his people through that. Just very interesting that the pandemic happened. They do believe they got it from the Parthians. That's how it's written in history. And that's what happens, right? When people mix together, they bring sicknesses to each other. So that's pretty difficult. Here are some, before I go into talking to you about Stoicism, here's some cool videos I want to point out. It's very, very great stuff. One's a 5-minute video, 10-minute video. So they're not as short, but I really hope you can watch them still. The opposite of the barbarians. Okay. The barbarians were known for wanting to conquer land, right? They wanted to go pillage and burn down the next village so that they could say that they had, bounty, and they could take land and they had power. And Marcus Aurelius comes along and says, guys, I don't want to do that. I want to live in a more peaceful way. So let's stop trying to conquer land for no reason. And so he started a movement, or he was part of a new movement called Stoicism. He was a Stoic philosopher. He believed you should be content with what you have, which ironically kind of goes along with this quarantine pandemic thing also. He wanted you to respect everyone, regardless of the class, if they were poor or rich, or of a barbarian or Roman. It didn't matter. You should respect them either way. You should figure out how to be a good neighbor. You should be nice to people. Magic. You should not be greedy. You should not go try to get more money unless you really need it to help take care of yourself. And I put in here, don't get extra toilet paper. Yes, Marcus Aurelius, during this insane quarantine, he would have said no hoarding the toilet paper, because he thought that you should just take only what you can use, only what you need. And he created very many important writings. And so he ended up kind of giving a gift to the future where we have so many of his writings. And his main book is called Meditations. Here I have an inscription from his writings. You can pause and look at that. Just wanted to show you. We have this from first-person sources. This is not something about a historian that said something about somebody else. No, we have exactly what Marcus Aurelius wrote. Here are some awesome quotes I wanted to share with you. Number one, and you can pause these and read through them if you're an emerging reader. That'll be cool for you to do. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Let that sink in for a second. The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. How much are you spending time developing quality thoughts? And this goes along with ACE's goals, right? ACE is all about filling you up as a student with good quality thoughts so that they will spill out of you and help you be more happy, essentially. Here's another quote. Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look. Look well into thyself. There is strength in there. And I think during this quarantine especially, like, look in yourself. There is strength in there. There's a spring that will well up in you if you will look for it. Here's another one. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. And you can say woman here as well, right? Don't waste any time arguing about, oh, what should a good man be? And actually, he's kind of making a dig at Plato and Socrates and Aristotle here, right? Because they had all these philosophical questions and big conversations about what should a good man be. And Marcus Aurelius said, stop talking and just do it. Okay, that's a Stoic idea. Quit talking about it, just get it done. Here's another one. What we do now echoes into eternity. I think that's a really brilliant one. Like, we know what we do now echoes into eternity. Another one, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And this is something, he was very into thinking about these things. Interestingly, he did act like a good person, but he also talked about what it is to be a good person, just like that other slide he told us not to be. Here's a good example. You have power over your mind. You don't have power over outside events. We don't have power over the quarantine. We don't have power over the pandemic, but we do have the ability to control our own mind. In one of the videos that you could watch on him, it talks about how Nelson Mandela, who was a famous person who was imprisoned wrongfully for many, many years, used the quotes from Marcus Aurelius and the writings of Marcus Aurelius to fill his mind and help him have power over his mind during all of the years he was in prison. Okay, that is enough about Marcus Aurelius. Now let's move to week 27, government topic. And this is our last topic of the day. We're going to be talking about citizenship. So with these barbarians, they were not Roman citizens, okay? They were born outside the borders of the Roman Empire. They didn't speak any Latin. They were considered uncivilized. They acted differently. They dressed differently. They spoke differently. And they were cast out because they did not have Roman citizenship. And so people who live out of a country, who live in a country but are not actually citizens, are actually labeled in a variety of ways. You'll hear the word aliens, immigrants, refugees, and in that day they called them barbarians. And all of those different words mean the same thing. They mean you live here, but you're an outsider still. You're not a citizen. Okay. Well, in America, let's tie that over to what we're doing here in the United States, 2020. Citizenship is something that we prize very greatly. And here is a picture of many people doing the last step, taking the pledge to become an American citizen. They have flags and they are taking some steps. I'm going to go through that in a couple slides of what it takes to become an American citizen. But back then, to become a Roman citizen, you had only 3 options. You had to be born a Roman citizen, 2 Roman citizens, and your parents had to be legally married, you had to either do that or serve in the Roman military for 25 years, or you had to purchase your citizenship for a lot of money. And so it was very, very, very valuable. It was very important to try to be a Roman citizen. If you were not a Roman citizen, check out the picture, right? By Roman law, if you were a Roman prisoner, you could not be executed, beaten, tortured, put in prison. But if you were a Roman, were not Roman, all those bad things could happen to you. If you were a citizen, you don't have to have all those bad things happen to you. It was a very big deal to be a citizen back then. So what is a citizen? Okay, let's just go with the definition right now. A citizen is a person acknowledged as legal member of a community or nation. This status is obtained through either birth, which in Rome it was through birth, and here in the US it's through birth, or the nationality of the parents. In Rome it would have been that way, or here, or by being legally naturalized, which we're going to talk about in a second. Legally naturalized, that means that somehow we made a process for you to go through to get your citizenship. Now, an alien is a person who is not a legal citizen of the country, but he lives in that country. So it's someone who maybe lives here in the United States, but has not legally become a citizen, but they live here. That person would be called an alien. So these two definitions are actually the definitions we have in the laws of the United States. And so here's a good discussion question for you as a family. What do the terms immigrants, refugees, or aliens mean to you? Because those are getting thrown around a lot. It's a great discussion. And I thought it would be kind of fun for those of you who may or may not have your citizenship here in the US. Most of you do. Here's the answers and the questions. But there is a US citizenship test, and I think it has many more questions than this on it. But questions maybe you can or cannot answer. What is the highest law of the land? What are the first 3 words of the Constitution? We the people. What do we call the first 10 amendments to the Constitution? The Bill of Rights. Who was our first president? What freedom do you have as a U.S. citizen? You can name several choices. How many branches of government are there? Can you answer these questions? These are things that as a born citizen, I don't actually have to answer these. But if you want to gain citizenship to the United States, you would have to answer these 10 and these 10. For example, number 11, what age must someone be before they can vote? Number 12, what do we salute when we say the Pledge of Allegiance? And so these are great questions for you to test yourself on, see if you know the answers to becoming a U.S. citizen. As we move forward, I think I had videos there, didn't I? Yeah, I have this really good video here on citizenship. Actually, that's on ancient Rome and the Republic, and kind of an overview process, I believe. But you can find lots of great how to become a citizen videos online. And then at the end of this video, I just wanted to point out like 4 more videos. Rome is such a good study, you guys. There are so many videos, so enjoy Roman study of books. We have tons of books at ACE if you would like to borrow some, to just kind of check out, more information about Rome and how it applies to us today. There's a 5 minutes on citizenship one. There's a fun glimpse of a teenage life in ancient Rome. There's this kind of 24-minute overview on the how they did it videos called Growing Up Roman. And that one's really great. And then there's the horrible life of an average Roman Empire slave overview. So these are great ways for you to get engaged and make sure that you're connected with studying as much as you can. Okay, I hope you have a good day and enjoy your studies.